we have like everyone today. So that's awesome. We will start with introductions, and my name is Aryuna. My background is in corporate finance, enterprise sales, venture capital. I was a co-founder of a venture-backed company, and then I started building a community of investors and founders. And now I help fund managers and founders to bring in more capital through connecting them with family offices. So this is what I do, and if you could introduce yourself, like 1 minute each, that would be awesome.
Hi everyone, my name is Hanna-Stina Sonts. I'm from Atomico, so we're a London-based VC fund, and I flew in especially for the event. Thank you for the invitation. I work in the intelligence team, and it's an interdisciplinary team, so I work very closely with our engineers and data scientists to think of better ways we can leverage the data and insight that we have from all the different data providers that we use to make better business decisions. Initially, it started more on sourcing. Now we're moving more and more towards the assessment level of things as well. And on top of that, we also work quite closely with the investor relations team and the finance team. But to be fair, then the investment team does remain the core part of my work still.
Awesome. I guess I'll go next. Hi, Marc here. I'm with Active Capital. We are a growth equity fund based in Connecticut and New York. We also have an office in Berlin and Cape Town. We are about $1.5 billion AUM, and we are, at least for my role, right, we are using data to enhance sourcing, enhance due diligence, we're a research-driven fund, so we're also using data extensively in our thesis building process and also portfolio management. I have a data science background. I'm basically building up AI infrastructure and data infrastructure within the company so that we can pretty much leverage AI and data in sourcing, portfolio, and throughout the life cycle.
You've heard about me, but I definitely consider myself a founder. I'm a founder first, and I just happen to be a VC.
Thank you so much for your introduction. So I know you probably have heard about the news that the founder of Revolut recently raised $250 million for his first fund that is AI-driven, and they are investing in late-stage companies. He has been working on that like for the past 2 years, and I thought, whoa, that's amazing because it's late stage. And then previously you had the slide that BlackRock also upgraded themselves because they invested in late-stage companies using AI. Though I had a question then, how do you assess early-stage companies in a way that you are using AI? Because in my experience, it's all about the resilience and the ability to sell. Are they likable? Can they actually overcome all the hurdles? Have they been competitive in the past in their lives? Like, for example, I come from Siberia, and I was like a chess state champion, and I was competitive speed skater, but that is not the part of my resume because like it's more on like the side, like we're on LinkedIn, we're doing like certain things, we get promoted. How do you assess founders when you invest at the early stage? What AI is missing, and what do you think you can add to that?
I'm happy to start. So at Atomico, we invest both at the venture and the growth stages. And yeah, the approaches are quite different. When it comes to growth investments, then you have the benefit that there's much more data available. Usually they're companies that are already well known. So at that stage, we can leverage more insight on what is available regarding the market growth rate, traction metrics, and also look at the team that they've already built to kind of assess the talent concentration and magnetism. So in the case of the growth team, I'd say the sourcing isn't bringing so much in net new opportunities, but it's more reinforcing the view that these companies are growing really well, and it's giving a nudge to the investment team that, hey, maybe now is the right time to re-engage. And actually, thanks to these nudges, the investment team, even if they've already been in contact with the company, they've been maybe like, you know, checking in earlier than usual, and thanks to that, being able to be at the table when it comes to fundraising opportunity earlier than the competitors. So back to the part on the venture assessment side, it is quite tricky because, as you mentioned, there's not that much information available. In the beginning, we even track stealth founders where there's no team and there's just one founder. We were able to leverage in LinkedIn data and basically build a profile of like what they've done before. If there's been a previous exit, have they worked in a company before that has a very high bar for what sort of talent they hire? So these are all signals that we pick up on, and then going from there, we can still track their web traffic, app downloads. If it's a B2B company, we look at reviews on that end as well. And combining all of these different metrics, we've built an algorithm to basically rank the early stage companies. And now we've been trying to be very, very targeted on only like bringing through the very top opportunities to the team. And then, yeah, it's their job of the investor to then build that relationship and get access.
Yeah, that's a super great point. Just want to add on to that there are online footprint, right? Other than just LinkedIn profile or something like that. There is also, for example, Twitter or X. There is also, if you're a developer, you have GitHub. You can see GitHub activities. You can pretty much look through their blogs or just other online footprint that can be helpful to evaluate a founder. What we are experimenting with is something that's related to personality. I think the MBTI test, you just need to pretty much take the questionnaire, and then that's not super helpful, but it just came across a research that's pretty much showing if you have a long-written form from someone, you can evaluate that person's big 5 traits, and that's pretty much effective, or to a similar level as a statistical model built from scratch, you know, like incorporating all of this information. So that's how generative AI or like GPT, if you can think of, can be super helpful in determining like early stage founders' characteristics. And I would only assume that as people get more online footprint, get more data available online, that approach can be more effective over time.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. As I mentioned, we don't currently evaluate the founder directly, like their personality traits and if they were an athlete or that sort of thing. But we do look at their success. What have they done in the past? What have they attracted to them in this company? And grade the quality of the attraction. And there's a high correlation with if you get Elad Gil to invest in your company versus your Uncle Bob, there's a huge difference in likely outcome. But there are people that I know really well who are studying the space of human evaluation and how to do that with us. I mentioned Jerry Yee. We're currently working with a company called Neural Sourcing and another early stage VC called 212 Ventures or 212 Angels. And they have been evaluating the founders directly. And by studying the space, they're finding there actually are predictive signals, and more every day. So I would say the human domain of being able to evaluate the likely success of another human can be improved with AI.
Thank you. What do you think about the relationships between the allocator and the entrepreneur, whether it is a VC and the founder, whether it is a family office and fund manager? There are metrics, but if you do not like personally this specific founder or fund manager, how do you think the probability of success is going to be big, and is it important when you are looking at companies? Likability, I mean personal connection.
I mean, I think on our side, we definitely look for charisma. To be honest, the likability probably goes both ways, that if the founder doesn't like us, then they probably don't want to partner with us as well. But no, the ability to lead a team, build a brand, and have this shining halo is definitely very important, especially when they need to go and build a team around it and expand their product. So that's definitely something we look, and that's something I don't think AI will be able to really measure super successfully in the coming years. Who knows? So the investment team is definitely something that we'll need to work on that, and yeah, I don't think they're going to be replaced on that anytime soon.
Yeah, just based on our experience, AI right now is more like a, if you will, like a first week intern for a lot of tasks. It doesn't know how you operate, what kind of implicit rules or tacit rules that you're following when it comes to interacting with founders or interacting internally, right? And then AI is definitely getting better on a daily basis, pretty much. But when it comes to building genuine relationship, right now it's still like humans still dominating that hand-holding, that social type of aspect.
Yeah, no, the human aspect of this business, we're still in very much a personal relationship business. I think what AI could do for you, what it's done for us, is that when I contact a company, I know I can invest in that company. We're done. Our diligence is done. They give us a little bit of confirmatory information, takes them about 10 minutes to fill out our form. And I think we've had one company out of 100 something that we said, I'm sorry, this isn't what we thought it was. Our AI was just wrong, so I apologize. But the vast majority of the case, it's literally one of the things that that startups say about us is that, man, that was the easiest capital I've ever raised. So I think that AI can actually help you. Now, founders still like to call me because I've started 8 companies and I've been in their shoes. So that relationship is powerful, but our value add is not me. Our value add is our AI. We give our tools, our technology to the founders, the companies, so they can use it to improve their odds of success. And our last speaker talked about investing in YC companies. YC has an internal tool they call Bookface, which rates all investors. And I can't got access to this, but I've been told by our founders that we have a 5 out of 5-star rating on Bookface. And they cite 2 things. These guys are incredibly fast. Fast no, fast yes. And they give us data that we can't get anyplace else. So those are our 2 value adds, and they're both based on AI.
Thank you. I was a venture partner at the fund that supported immigrants, and I had a couple of conversations with family offices, and they told me, no offense, Aryuna, I know you're an immigrant, but I don't care about immigrants. My focus is different field. Even though this fund has tremendous success, 15x return, awesome. And still, people did not think that they could either trust or like the thesis. So how does AI can identify the trust point?
I'll be happy to talk about that. So I started doing this in 2013, I mentioned. We started investing in 2017 on a small fund. And our chairman of that company was called crowdsmart.ai, if you want to look it up. Was a woman, and she was giving a speech to I think it was the UN actually, and she wanted data on our investments. That little fund was the first check in about 35 companies, 100 grand each. And I'm ashamed to say that we did not look at the demographic nature of our investments. We just were making and we were checking them out, and that fund had 80% pre-seed to Series A. That was an amazing rate right there. Turns out that 42% of our investments had a woman founder or founding team, which was, compared to the VC industry, about 6%. It essentially took out the bias that you get from VCs, typical human interactions.
The other thing that we're seeing on our side, so we're building out a thematic one-pager generator. So AI is able to screen early stage activity, look at clusters, and bring it up to the firm. And we find it's quite an interesting way to discuss new emerging spaces, because traditionally how we've approached it as a firm is that if someone finds a cluster of companies themselves or has a special interest, they might do the thematic work. But this way we bring new clusters forward and we get the team to kind of fence between themselves. And it means that you're not really able to dismiss a topic because you don't think it's interesting. There hasn't been previous success stories in the space. So we've seen that AI actually pushes you to think beyond your comfort zone. And maybe we still don't make the investment, but at least you've had like a proper thought about it and explained your rationale. So it's a good way to kind of like have contrarian thinking in the team. And then the other thing we've noticed is that some team members, if they don't rely on like the AI suggestions, start doing their own like, I don't know, deep research searches where they put in all the documents that they made in the past, they might end up in an echo chamber because they're only feeding the AI information from their previous deals, so the AI kind of evolves into them and just like feeds back what they already wanted to hear. So that's why we've made sure that we approach all AI solutions on a firm level, and we train it on like very broad data, not just our firm-specific data or any other firm-specific data, to avoid the trap of, we've only done these things in the past, hence we shouldn't do them in the future as well. So there's definitely potential pitfalls of people kind of training the AI solutions to just like continue echoing their habits. But I think it is also an opportunity to have like a new neutral team member.
I think for us it's more, we want to provide like a guardrail to AI so that it doesn't just follow like a certain track that's either biased or just outright not conformative pretty much. But at the same time, like human need to do the final tracking. For example, we have a research team that's based in Cape Town. And what they do is they analyze every element of a company, of a founder, and then we use AI to pretty much empower that process, right? Like to offer either a different opinion, as you mentioned, or to verify or refute if that statement or if that conclusion is actually sound or not.
Awesome. If you had a magic wand, what do you think you would add to AI to make sure that the assessment is like fully complete?
I like what you said earlier around AI being an N10. That's kind of my experience so far. I think we've been able to train it quite far within Atomico, so now I consider my AI as more like an analyst. And I'm looking forward to the day when it will become as an associate and I can become even more senior. So I think the kind of like contextual awareness and really like the business mindset at the moment is lacking. It's something we've considered also building out more in-house, but now we're at the decision of like, should we outsource, should we build? Things are moving so quickly that at the time that we actually get to a new product, maybe there's something on the market already. I still have some trust issues as well with it. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But like last week, for example, when we were doing the thematic one-pager that I mentioned, we looked at sustainability solutions in the food and beverage industry, and we asked it to write a one-pager. And it was going on and on about how in Europe there's strong tailwinds for sustainability solutions because there's new regulation kicking in. But actually, when you Google it, you see the regulation was canceled or in February or something. So it built a whole thesis on old information. And it's still, it makes it for me still difficult to trust it. And any information we put towards the team, it still requires heavy double checking. And that's why I feel like it's an intern that ultimately you still double check everything before you give it to a colleague. But no, maybe one day.
Yeah, the biggest problem we're seeing right now is still data, right? What we're talking about is more like contextual data that are not easily captured within like day-to-day interaction. We're talking about like LinkedIn posts you saw maybe like 3-4 months ago, and then you just draw inspiration from that, and then or a conversation you had in a conference like this 3 years ago, and then you just got, hey, like that's super useful insight, right? So what we are trying to do is to incorporate as much information as possible. We're talking about contextual data, like the reason why we invested or the reason why we don't think it's a fit, right? And then to put all of them into context, and AI will be able to do either information retrieval or do reasoning toward those data so that it can come to more of aligned either results or a conclusion itself.
If I could have one dream, it would be that startups would hurry up and fail or succeed, so I could rev my model faster. I'm just joking, of course. My biggest issue is to really, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, just think of this as a test. Very few VCs are going to go all in and do 100% AI VC. It's just not going to happen for most of you. It's going to be a tool that you use. I have a tool on my phone that I can go to a conference and put a URL of a company and I can get the complete score of that company live. That's a great tool for any VC. We currently spending, we're a small company. We're currently spending about $1 million a year on data, 2 data scientists and 1 engineer, maybe a bit more than $1 million. I would like to go up to $3 to $5 million a year. I just don't have the money. I don't have the AUM to support it. So if I could, I would have a lot more data, which is going to cost a lot more money, and hire more engineers. And then use that data to create more tools for my startups, my portfolio companies. And by the way, I eventually want to give it away to every founder on the planet. That's the goal of the company, and make all these tools available for free. But just scale is my issue.
Yeah, I was dreaming about this assessment part where you can stress the entrepreneur so much that the situation would be so real. Like, for example, you have to pay salaries on Friday and then you have short runway, or half of your team is in the country that gets bombed. I mean, like all that happened to me, and I thought, who can actually handle that? And then I think once the resilience is in place, everything is possible. That's what I am dreaming about in terms of AI being able to assess like people's traits. That would be the part. But we are on time. If you have questions, guys, please raise your hand.
Yeah, I can speak about Atomico's experience. So we've been around since 2006, and we started building out an engineering function roughly 10 years ago. And to be honest, it's been a cultural journey. There's definitely some people who take it heads on and they love it and they just see it as a way to accelerate their own workflows. And some people, I don't know if they have like trust issues or they're just so used to their own ways of working that it's been really tricky to get 100% people on board, especially as we're not an AI native VC fund, as you mentioned. What we've found is that what really helps is creating FOMO. So within each team, we have kind of developed a champion relationship with someone, and if we are able to test our products with them and prove that it works and have like a few success stories, then to be honest, everyone else just follows at that stage. But it's more the initial patience part that I think it really varies between people. And yeah, having these champions in place has really helped, but ultimately it does take a while. So since we started efforts from the sourcing part, I think it took us maybe 1 or 2 years since until we started consistently sourcing companies from there and making investments. And now we're still in the investment holding period, so it's hard to say, are those better investments versus others? So rooting that, trust has taken a while, but I think now there's been an industry shift, and it's what Marc mentioned as well. People are feeling that if they're not doing it now, they're just going to be further behind in a few years' time. So definitely it's seen as something that's really recognized, and across the firm, people are pro and like really investing in it. But yeah, some personality differences will remain.
Yeah, so we've been through a similar journey. We started this AI data experiments from 2015, and we're just trying different methods, right? And then two conclusions here, or observations, if you will. First is that it's more of a spectrum. It's not either you are on the Copilot side or you're on the fully automated side. Analogy here would be like self-driving, right? You go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, and then, okay, level 3, from level 3 to like full autonomous driving, like Waymo, that took like way longer than people expected. But then right now, as per members data in SF, there's at least more than 20% of the not the traffic, but the total call of the taxi driving. Sorry, I just don't remember the exact data, but it just all of a sudden, all at once, took off. So I think there's going to be a long or longer than expected time for us to fully adopt AI, but I'm pretty sure we're all in this journey together. The second one is more toward, how can we trust AI to be fully integrated, right? Like who's gonna be responsible for all the results and who's gonna pretty much take the blame and then try to build the trust from here. I think those are the two main issues that we're thinking through right now.
So thank you for that. So the answer from my perspective, I think the economics of VC are not particularly suited for adopting expensive new technology. NEA, which I love those guys, they've invested in 2 of my companies. They just hired their first data scientist, was a brand new college graduate out of Stanford, right? They're a 40-something billion fund. That's the best they can do, right? So I think it's going to be a long time coming. I think for most everybody who's not got, $500 million or more under management, it's just going to take a lot of your management fees to fund this stuff. The number one, we don't have to look for data scientists anymore. They come to us. And you know where they're coming from? Other VC firms. They get frustrated because at best, they're just trying to find out one champion in the firm that will trust them, then they can spread out. And Jerry Yee, for example, was the co-founder of Signal Fire. I hope I'm not giving anything away, but he got frustrated that they're just using that for their window dressing, right? And then he went to Lightspeed. Now he's not there anymore either, so there's probably a good reason. And now he's at Bitcraft. We'll see if he stays there. But he's a brilliant dude. I would hire him in a second. I'd make him a partner with us in a second. So I think actually the competition, which I'm happy to have, by the way, I think the competition's not going to come from existing VCs. I think it's going to come from new people who are rethinking this industry.
Thank you. I really like the question here. If AI only analyzes historical data, how can it predict disruptive innovations that yield a 10x return for VC? Who wants to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. To get that 10x return, you're looking for power law companies. Power law companies have a signature early on. The trick is to get into those companies. That's really the challenge. So you can train AI to identify most early stage companies that will become unicorns. I'll say that again. You can train AI to look for the signals that will identify the majority of early stage startups that will become unicorns. Go get into them. That's your challenge. Because Sequoia's seeing them too, by the way. Andreessen's seeing them too. Lightspeed's seeing them too. Those guys are seeing them and they're knocking on the door. I mean, we like I mentioned for Levin Labs and Harvey, we were probably the first Silicon Valley firm to call both of those companies up. And maybe not first for Harvey, but early. And let's face it, you get a call from Track and you get a call from Sequoia or Andreessen. Who are you going to return? It's that's your challenge.
Yeah, it's a good question. On our end, we actually haven't been looking at analyzing, the innovation element of the company and which space it's building. We've been just looking at the traction. So it's been quite industry agnostic, actually. And from that end, you can tell if a company is growing like crazy already at the early stage. And it actually doesn't matter where it's building in. We're only now starting to experiment with the thematic work. It's what the example that I mentioned. And it is tricky because, as you say in the question as well, it does rely on research done in the past and views in the past. So I think breaking it out of that habit will be quite tricky. So in the end of the day, you will continue to need the investor and the person around the table as well to, come in with that fresh mindset. And depends on when you're investing. Then in the beginning, it doesn't really matter because you're just investing in the team, and they might pivot once or twice or even more. So as long as you have the best team, then you can still grow like crazy. It doesn't matter which space you're building in.
Yeah, I think a distinct characteristic for VC industry is more like strength brings strength. I read it somewhere as a nerd. I'll definitely find a source later. But what it means is that to an extent, right, like historical patterns or historical data can predict the success of the next unicorn or the next decacorn. It just, as you said, right, like to what extent should we apply that? Like, are we talking about a specific industry? Are we talking about a specific sector? Are we talking about a kind of business model? I think that's definitely more case by case and more customizable. And that's where like the whole data science or like analytics kicking in, right? You just have to avoid the cookie cutter conclusion.
Who else has a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Happy to answer that. The question was, are there differences within industries? Does AI work better in some places and less? And the answer is there is. So for example, we cannot invest in any company that requires government approval before you can go to market. We just can't figure out how to forecast that, which means we can't invest in any drug discovery. And which was interesting because when we took it out of our model, our predictive return multiple went down. When you hit them, you can hit them massively big. But it represented about a third of all false positives in our model. So by getting rid of those, that's how we drove the false positive down to, less than 10%. And so we balance that. The industry focus, we balance it on how predictive it can be. And again, just the simple rule of thumb is if the primary buyer is government, if the government approval is required, we can't invest.
Not from an AI analyst point of view, but for the State of European Tech Report last year, we did look at if there's any differences between the success of becoming a unicorn by industry. And it really depends on where you're building. So we looked at the US versus Europe, and we noticed a few key differences, which were quite interesting. So in Europe, there's been an early positive flywheel effect in the fintech industry. A lot of early success stories means that there's a lot of talent building in the space. And basically, if you're in the fintech space, you were double more likely to become a unicorn if you normalize the cohort sizes. Meanwhile, in the US, it was actually the same case for the health industry and also for consumer and retail products. So definitely differences between the geographies and the markets they're building in, just because the US health system is so different, so that a lot of companies there see more success ultimately.
Yeah, I just kind of use a more specific example related to AI, right? Like when it comes to like software startups or software companies, you would expect the gross margin to be, 80%, 70% to be really high, right? But then with all of the available public data you've seen or just information we gathered, the gross margins for AI companies tend to be lower. Why? Because there's the code for software is replicable, right? Like you just apply that, and the marginal cost for additional new user is just nearly zero, right? But then for AI, you still need to provide infra, you need to provide inference, you need to have like dedicated computational resources, especially when you're doing test line computing, if you're doing reasoning, right? So that's more of a specific example of why the benchmark would be different industry by industry, but pretty much that's, we are adopting along this wave, right? Like our partners in the firm just said, either we adopt AI or we die. I think that's applicable to everyone here.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a good question. Actually, we're seeing it from our signals. So we scan the whole of LinkedIn to see if there's anyone who's now a self-founder that has a strong background. And there's actually, people are clearly starting to understand that VCs are using data. So they're, customizing and pimping up their LinkedIn profiles, saying that they're the founders of Facebook and Google, and that they studied at Harvard and Yale. So we're already seeing it on a personal level. I think there's definitely people who are basically doing what you're mentioning. So people who are in the industry are at the moment, I don't want to say jumping on the AI train because I don't think it's temporary, but there's definitely people who are very close to the space that they're seeing these big trends coming, and they're seeing this as a moment to capture the momentum and start building. I'm not sure if you can start a venture studio. I would be keen to see that as well.
It's a really interesting question, a related question. Should you have AI on your board of directors? Show of hands, how many people think a founding team of 2 people, or 1 if you want, but I would say 2 people, will be worth $1 billion by the 2030, before the end of the decade? How many people? Probably half of you or more. I think that's the case. So are they actually using AI to help them identify the opportunities and then using AI to accelerate their growth? Most likely, yes. So I don't think we're there yet. I think humans have the edge, and probably for a long time coming, on innovation, what is new, what's possible, and then AI can just add to your growth rate and replace what you used to have people do. I'm not, by the way, an advocate for this. I think societally we've got some real issues to deal with there, but that's just a fact. That's going to happen.
Yeah, I think in the perfect world, if you have all of the data available, right, and all of the verifiable true data, as you mentioned, not the fake data, you can do that. But then on top of that, you need to take into consideration of team chemistry, right? And then you probably want to use, say, like a graph data representation to analyze all the interaction, all of the, pretty much to quantify a lot of the unquantified aspects in this current age, right? In the future, probably, and I'm pretty sure there are VCs that are playing around with this concept, but yeah, just don't have clarity on whether that can actually be super successful.
Can you provide specific examples of using AI to predict and make investment decisions? What did AI indicate about this high potential startup? Specific example, yes, I like this question.
I can give one from both of our funds. So our recent investment from the growth team was to a company based in Japan called Kari. We've never made investments in Japan before, so how the signal was able to identify it was that it analyzed previous investments made in Japan, and it was able to determine who are the top investors who have the best track record. So we started tracking those investors, and we saw that one of those investors had previously invested in Kari. So that triggered the team to start the conversations, and it ended up being a positive partnership for us. And it more was a case of triggering a conversation, and then the investment team had to open the door and do the rest of the work. In the case of the venture team, we invested in Nico Health. It's a Stockholm-based company that does health scanning. And there, the algorithm saw that the team was extremely strong, even at the very early stage. So one of the co-founders was Daniel Ek, the Spotify co-founder. And also the other co-founder had a very, very strong profile. So it A, triggered a signal on that. And then B, when it launched in Stockholm, it caused a craze online, and so many people went on the website. So it had multiple triggers on website traffic as well. So those combined meant that the investment team were immediately notified. And to be fair, in this case, it was such a high-profile deal that everyone already knew about it. But it just reinforced our view that it's one of the top ones in the region, and we definitely need to make sure to speak with them.
Yeah, for us, the actual use case is still more of a top of funnel, right? How can you get more educated about this specific market that you have more conviction with, right? And that coupled with our research-driven approach, which is we have all of the research people trying to find interesting market and then try to use AI again to enrich those market with more signals, with more data, with more companies. One of the good example of our portfolio is Pallet. We did industrial software research, I think back in 2022, 2023. That was the time that we actually got a good look of that market. And then after that, we realized, oh, there are actually a lot of strong players and it's an attractive market. And then we got into Pallet and the rest is history. Right now, they're doing really good. And we're just going to repeat the playbook again and again, hopefully.
So I'm the odd guy up here. 100% of our investments are AI. Well, I'll give you a couple examples. Our very first investment was in a company called Human Interest. Human Interest, our AI spotted because the requirement for companies to offer 401k plans was just spreading across the nation. Communities, states, governments were requiring this. And they had just a brilliant solution based upon the feedback that we could read in the marketplace from their customers. So we predicted that this was going to become a unicorn. It did in 15 months after we invested in it. Another company, Stoke Space Technologies, which is a competitor to SpaceX, they did not pass our criteria when we first looked at them. But Andy Lapsa, who is just a brilliant CEO of the company, he asked the question, why? What did I fail? And there was one metric that he failed on, and we said, our data scientists won't let you, we won't give you the answer, but if you give us the data you have, we'll sort it for you and put it in priority order so you can do something with it. And it turned out he did. And to this day, he thanked me for that because the solution that we added to his equation has been something he falls on almost on a daily basis. He's like a huge fan of Track. So that company became a unicorn just recently. And they're taking on a massive task to reuse both stages of the rocket, return them, and then fire them back up in the satellites and put them in space the next day, right? Fully reusable rockets. Not a small task. It's going to require a ton of money. But this company is on the way to making that a reality.
Sorry, one more point on Pallet. It's actually an intersection of supply chain, industrial software, and also AI. I just mentioned industrial software, just want to clarify that.
Thank you. I remember in 2022, I hosted an investor event, and there was a sponsor, the food and beverage company. They brought all the sparkling water cans, and Sergey, you even was there. I don't know if you remember that, but the founder of this company showed up, and then every investor told me, but the market is oversaturated. Sparkling water, how is it different from another sparkling water? But I remember she connected with everyone there, and her sales skills were on top. And then 2 months later, and I also didn't believe that sparkling water can get successful. That's successful. 2 months later, I saw news that they got sold to Pepsi for $1.65 billion, and no one could predict that at that time in 2022. So we have 5 seconds left, I guess, and as we have to follow the rules here. And thank you so much for coming today, and let's connect.